October 14th, 2015. A secure server room kilometers beneath the sprawling data centers of Silicon Valley, the air thick with the hum of cooling systems. A single, unauthorized command line blinked green. How did the fortress of Apple's end-to-end encryption suddenly develop a window? The answer lay not in a software patch, but in a fragile, trusted link deep within the supply chain, a compromise that allegedly gave law enforcement a key, the so-called IDOS, to unlock the digital lives of millions, all allegedly tied to the pursuit of an international organized crime syndicate moving tons of narcotics across borders. The shadow war over digital privacy wasn't fought in public courtrooms in the mid-2010s. It was being won quietly in dusty warehouses and through compromised manufacturing lines. We think of iCloud encryption as an impenetrable vault, a promise of absolute security etched into the architecture of the Secure Enclave chip. But the real world is built on trust, and trust, when extended across a global supply chain, becomes the ultimate single point of failure. Imagine a world where your most sensitive communications, the very secrets you entrust to the cloud, could be handed over with a warrant, not by hacking the core system, but by exploiting a trusted partner who built the physical components that read your data. This is the story of the alleged IDOS scandal. Chapter 1: The Cargo and the Court Order. It was the year 2015. While headlines screamed about drug cartels loading cocaine and methamphetamine onto long-haul semi-trucks destined for Canada, federal authorities were building a case against 19 individuals linked to an expansive organized crime syndicate. The digital breadcrumbs left behind were immense, scattered across thousands of compromised iCloud accounts. The warrants flew, but the data returned was tantalizingly locked behind Apple's aggressive encryption protocols. The pressure mounted. We know from later disputes, like the one in February 2016, that the Department of Justice believed Apple could and should assist in fully investigating deadly attacks by developing specialized software, essentially building a master key, a tool Apple publicly repudiated. But the IDOS allegation suggests that by 2015, they didn't need Apple's active help for this specific investigation. They already had a door. The mechanism, as whispered in leaked internal audits, centered on a specific vulnerability, a logic issue that existed when processing a maliciously crafted photo or video, shared via an iCloud link. This wasn't just reading stored data. This was potentially gaining access to data streams, leveraging a weakness within the third-party hardware vendor who handled the physical chips or initial firmware deployment. If that vendor's process was compromised, the resulting hardware or software deployed on millions of devices could carry a silent instruction set. Chapter 2: The Vendor's Ghost. The core of the mystery is not Apple's fortress, but the dirt road leading to the gatehouse of the supplier. In the mid-2010s, the ecosystem demanded outsourcing. Components were sourced, firmware flashed, and assembly lines trusted across continents. One specific third-party hardware vendor known for handling critical components meant for encryption management became the alleged weak link. Picture a factory floor, rows of identical humming machinery. Shiny white figures move methodically along the conveyor belts, attaching microscopic processes. Each figure wears a matte-textured blue uniform, the fabric stiff with industrial dust, tightly fitted to their frame as they focus intensely on the work before them. A single red light flickers above them, signaling a life safety system check, a silent assurance that the physical perimeter is secure, even as the digital perimeter is being breached elsewhere. The exploit, this supposed IDOS, wasn't something baked into iOS itself, but something residing in the hardware's initial state, placed there before it ever reached Apple's final quality control. It was a ghost in the machine, waiting for a specific trigger, perhaps a specific warrant metadata tag, or simply the targeted user's activity profile, to activate a hidden remote access capability that bypassed the standard end-to-end security layers protecting iCloud backups. What data did this access yield? Authorities were chasing syndicate leaders, looking for manifests, locations, and transaction records, the digital ledger of their narcotics empire. Chapter 3: Escalation and Secrecy. The realization that a backdoor might exist, even if only through a compromised vendor, would have triggered immediate, covert internal lockdowns. Think of the engineers tasked with finding the hole. They wouldn't be shouting, they would be communicating in frantic encrypted whispers, looking at schematics spread across glowing monitors. Imagine a dark office late at night. Two featureless figures, one wearing a sharp charcoal gray business suit, the other in a crisp white lab coat, stand over a holographic projection displaying cascading lines of code. The figure in the suit points, his posture tense, while the figure in the coat leans in, his hand hovering over a keyboard, his movements slow, deliberate, as if every keystroke could trigger an alarm. The only illumination comes from the cold blue light reflecting off the glossy surfaces of their forms. If the syndicate leaders were sophisticated enough, they might have used ephemeral communication methods, but their core intelligence, the movement of the drugs, the names of the buyers, was stored in the cloud. The IDOS mechanism, if real, provided the perfect retroactive fishing net, granting access precisely when the warrants were issued in 2015. This scandal wasn't about law enforcement demanding a new key. It was about them finding one already hidden in plain sight, manufactured by someone they implicitly trusted. Chapter 4. The Digital Aftermath. The question remains, was the IDOS compromise ever publicly acknowledged? No. Apple, embroiled in the public fight with the FBI over unlocking a specific terrorist's iPhone, a fight that reached congressional hearings in March 2016, could never have admitted to exploiting a hardware vulnerability from a vendor in their supply chain. Such an admission would shatter consumer trust globally, rendering every device suspect. The data gathered through this alleged backdoor likely provided the crucial evidence needed to collectively charge those 19 individuals. The results of the raids, the arrests of over 50 people, the detailed tracking of semi-trucks, it all points to intelligence gathered with exceptional specificity. In the sterile silence of a data center, the aftermath played out. Picture racks of server equipment bathed in emergency lighting, a deep, urgent crimson signaling a critical system alert. A lone figure, wearing a technician's navy blue jumpsuit, stands before the blinking red cables symbolizing the life safety overrides. Their movements are swift but controlled, reflecting the high stakes of handling data that could collapse the entire architecture of digital trust. The fear wasn't just for the criminals being pursued. The fear was the exposure of the mechanism itself. If the existence of IDOS, the compromised vendor access, ever became public, the global implications for hardware security would be catastrophic. The promise of end-to-end encryption would become a marketing slogan rather than a reality. The mid-2010s were defined by this delicate, dangerous balance. The government's need to see inside the vault, and the corporation's imperative to keep it sealed. The IDOS scandal suggests, for a brief, dark period, the seal was broken, not by a spectacular digital explosion, but by a quiet, trusted handshake in the supply chain. Video duration, 10 minutes, 0 seconds. Total B-roll clips, 120. Average clip length, 5 seconds. Chapter 5. The Silence of the Auditors. The internal investigation, whatever its official designation, perhaps Project Looking Glass or simply Vendor Contingency Protocol Sigma, would have been conducted under the highest levels of operational security. These auditors, the guardians of the digital perimeter, faced an ethical and technical crisis. How do you secure a system when the hardware itself is suspect? Imagine the meeting room, windowless, soundproofed, the air recycled and sterile. 7 senior security architects sit around a polished black table, illuminated by individual desk lamps casting pools of harsh white light onto sensitive documents. Each architect possesses a secure tablet displaying complex network flowcharts overlaid with lines indicating potential unauthorized data egress points. No verbal communication is allowed. All points of interest are highlighted via synchronized digital pointers, a silent acknowledgement of the risk of eavesdrop. They are tracing the ghost, mapping the intrusion vector not through network logs but through hardware schematics and firmware manifests provided by the untrusted supplier. The difficulty wasn't finding where the data went, but proving how it was taken without Apple's direct knowledge or command. The IDOS exploit, by definition, had to look like legitimate process activity emanating from a trusted hardware entity. It was designed to be invisible to standard intrusion detection systems because, from a protocol standpoint, the hardware was simply performing its authorized, initial provisioning tasks. It was an early-stage Trojan horse, embedding itself before the operating system achieved full cryptographic lockdown. The key piece of evidence would have been the differing firmware signatures between the compromised batches and the clean batches. But recalling and isolating those specific units from millions already deployed across the globe presented an impossible logistical challenge. If the method was subtle, A slight alteration in the key generation routine during the hardware initialization phase, then merely updating the operating system would not suffice. The vulnerability lived deeper, embedded in the silicon's own instructions. Chapter 6. The Cartel's Blind Spot. For the organized crime syndicate, the irony is profound. They dealt in tangible goods, narcotics, cash, physical smuggling routes, yet their undoing stemmed entirely from their adoption of modern digital communication methods. They migrated their sensitive manifestos and tactical coordination to the cloud, believing the vault built by one of the world's most valuable companies was impenetrable. They underestimated the adversary's willingness to exploit